So, good afternoon. My name is Mike Green. I represent the Central London Maintenance Association. I was recently elected as chairman of the Central London Maintenance Association after a career of 28, 30 years in construction, engineering, and then finally facilities management. That's where maintenance lives today. What I want to do first of all is talk to you very briefly about the Central London Maintenance Association and what it stands for. There's a great deal of heritage with the Central London Maintenance Association. It goes back to 1966 when there were several regional maintenance associations. They were part of the British Maintenance Association. Central London Maintenance Association is the only part that remains of that. Every other one was, well, it fell into disrepair basically. Unique, isn't it? I have to get that in, sorry. So the Central London Maintenance Association stands for dissemination of engineering and technology within the maintenance industry, and particularly buildings and the built environment. That's where we work. Engineering and maintenance engineering now forms very much part of the facilities management industry by default in the corporate world and the commercial world. And it's moving into social housing and other worlds as well, but it's predominantly in the commercial and the corporate world. That includes institutions, so public and private sector. The facilities management business, I'm going to build up some really big figures and then bring it back down to earth, first of all. The facilities management business is reckoned to be worth this year in the UK £19 billion, which is enormous. That represents 8% of GDP. I'm reading this because I can't remember all the figures, I'm dreadful with figures. Now, maintenance, generally speaking, is around about 60% of the facilities management market. So you're looking at about £9 billion in maintenance, corporate, commercial, institutional, and a bit of social housing. That's around about 5% of GDP. Now, if you look at the margins that the facilities management companies work on, they're very, very low. They're around about, well, if you look at the figures that they release, they work on about 3%, 2 to 3% GM, gross margin. That's what they declare. They bid work a little bit higher than that, but generally speaking, that's what they release in their figures. So a lot of that money, that £19 billion, goes back into the business, paying the resource, paying for, obviously, tax and the usual sort of fiscal things, training and equipment. That's about it, really. There's a few other ancillary things in there, but it mostly runs back into the business, but it comes back into the pockets of the resource. So if you take that £8 billion or £9 billion in M&E maintenance and fabric maintenance, most of that that's left after equipping the guys, training the guys, and paying their taxes and pensions goes into their pockets, and it sits with people that you live next door to, electricians, plumbers, chippies. It brings it right back down to earth. It's quite humbling, really, that sort of money is coming back into your pockets, their pockets, and back onto the high street. When we look at retail at the moment, what's happening with retail, it relies on those guys getting paid. The other big one, of course, is construction. But I've left that out on purpose because it really doesn't relate to this. Now, coming back to the CLMA and what we're going to do in the future, because we're going to be renaming ourselves. The CLMA is a bit old hat, really. Central London, it's a bit elitist, isn't it? But we want to keep the Maintenance Association in it. We're at a point now where they were in 1966. In 1966, they didn't have internet, but they also had a lot of new technology coming along. Electromechanical controls, air handling units, lighting controls, switches, things like that. The chief engineers that ran institutions and corporate estates needed to know and understand how that worked. So that's why that association was formed then. We've got internet now, we've got magazines, we've got online magazines, we've got every imaginable professional association able to disseminate information to their members. However, technology moves at such a pace, a lot of the institutions, the professional institutions, can't move that quick and don't. I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers, and that's like walking into a museum. Getting to do anything. I'm on the committee of the Special Interest Group for FM in Sibsey, and getting them to produce a website for us, a microsite, as got mentioned earlier on, there's one of them out there somewhere or other, getting them to produce that took 5.5 years. That's dreadful, isn't it? So, with the CLMA, we're completely independent of any professional organisation, training body, or anything like that. We're not associated with the British Institute of Facilities Management, and we're not associated with the International Facilities Management Association, IFMA, which is the new one, which has now formed itself with the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. So we've got complete independence and autonomy to do what we want. Now I'm going to tell this room what we're going to call ourselves, but it's for this room only, and it stays within these 4 walls, because
Stop tweeting.
Stop tweeting, yeah. Show your fingers. We're going to call ourselves the Technology Enabled Maintenance Association. We want to look at what we're using today and what that's going to be like in the future. And I'm talking about, when I talk about the future, I'm talking about tomorrow, not a year's time, or two years' time, or 10 years' time. It's pointless. Nobody knows what's going to happen there. It's a bit like Brexit. Sorry, I mentioned it again. Somebody else mentioned it, and that's the second time today. It's a little bit like Brexit. Nobody knows the outcome 10 years from now, what technology will be. We can't shoot glass ball. So we want to look at the technology of tomorrow, what we're going to be using for our clients and for our businesses today. Somebody mentioned something about machinery being isolated in just pieces of equipment. Well, the technology exists today for pieces of equipment, what we consider to be mechanical pieces of equipment, to talk to each other. IoT. We've got AI coming along. We've got VR. We've got so many of these things at our disposal today, and these are the things that are coming into our industry now. How we use them today is the thing. We're in an industry that is slow to take up technology, traditionally, but it's being driven from outside of our industry now. We're not in a position where we can say, well, we'll wait until tomorrow. The clients are saying to us, we want you to take this technology and use it in our buildings and in our estates, and we want you to run our estates in such a way that we've got the data and the information so that we know what's happening now, not last week. We don't want to report. We want to be able to read it now. So energy, of course, is the big one. That's the one that everybody talks about now. It's on the board, finally, and people are sitting up and listening. They want to be able to buy their energy cheaper, for a start. They want to be able to use it, or less of it, rather. But also, corporate social responsibility is pushing them to use it responsibly. And this all is centred around maintenance. Who's going to run the use of that energy? That's water, that's gas, that's electricity, that's data as well. There's a brilliant building in Holland, I think it is. I think it's one of the Dell buildings. And it's the first one of its kind. Dell decided to run power over Ethernet cables. They didn't want all these plug sockets everywhere and cables running everywhere. You've seen the desks with hundreds of cables spewing out the back like spaghetti. They wanted to cut all that down. They wanted to go wireless where they could, and where they couldn't, they'd bring the power in over Ethernet. There are so many things on somebody's desk that is a low voltage item of equipment they can run it over Ethernet cables. Not old Ethernet cables, but they have to be upgraded, but they can run it over the Ethernet. 2,000 employees in an office running power over Ethernet. They had so few plug sockets anywhere in the building. It was brilliant. You'll notice also that I've moved right away from what Naomi said. I haven't mentioned shit or grit anywhere, because that's old hat. It's gone. We don't need to worry about the shit and grit anymore. We've got monitoring equipment, if we use it properly, it'll deal with that for us. Eventually we'll have to go and get our hands dirty, but it'll tell us when we have to. Coming back to what David said, something we do. Yes, we do see maintenance as routine. You said we didn't, but we do. We have every kind of imaginable process that forms a routine. SFG 20 is something that every piece of mechanical and electrical equipment in buildings has a prescribed maintenance procedure and interval. If you want to use it, you don't have to. It's not compulsory. There are things like reliability. That's easy for me to say. Reliability-centred maintenance, planned preventative maintenance, business-focused maintenance. None of these are prescriptive in a compliance manner. They're completely at your discretion to use, but you use them where you think it fits best, so that you have everything in order. And of course, the whole thing is driven by compliance as well. You've got the HSE looking at you with every day, making sure that your fire alarms, your emergency lighting, your Legionella testing, tap temperatures, all of that pseudomonas, all those things that exist in buildings are looked after, tested on a regular basis, and certificates in place. Now, of course, today, everything's electronic. So you can show the HSE remotely. They don't have to come and investigate you. You can show them remotely. You just on your computer-aided facilities management system, which there are a lot of proprietary systems out there now. There's a few unique ones as well. And you can show them. There are the certificates. There are the test results. They can come down and see for themselves if they want, but they don't have to. It's all there and in real time. Management information is old hat now, because we've got so far forward of that. Blockchain has started to come into play with estates, and it's now filtering down through everything that estates do. They hold the budgets to facilities management and therefore maintenance. And that blockchain is going to look at, it's going to start changing the way we buy things, who we buy them from, the intervals that we buy them, and can we buy them now cheaper than we think we can buy them in 6 weeks' time or a month's time when we need them. But we don't have to have them delivered now. We've bought the commodity. That goes with energy as well, don't forget. So we can start to buy in advance and download it as we need it. Hopefully we need it less, because our maintenance guys are on the floor and they're running those pieces of equipment in a responsible manner, and they're using the equipment at their disposal to maintain the use of the energy for the client. We're spending their money responsibly. We're also working on the environmental issues as well. Everything we do on a daily basis in maintenance has some kind of environmental impact, whether it's what we buy, how we get it delivered, the result of using it, and the emissions. So this whole thing, this whole environmental procedure and quality process runs through everything we do. Some of the companies I've worked for, big ones, fairly international, 50, 60 billion pound a year turnover companies, have got invested massive amount of money in quality procedures that include environmental, include corporate social responsibility, etc., all the different aspects. And that filters down to the guys on the shop floor. They all have to know those policies, know how they work, and they know the systems. Every one of our technicians these days, if they work for a decent sized company, is armed with either armed with a mobile device, handheld, or a laptop, and he can access systems, report, and show people that he's doing what he's doing, and that goes straight back to his client, and they can see that on a daily basis, minute by minute, in real time. I'll run out of time. I'm available afterwards. You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't Twitter, but my organisation does. CLMA does. You can find the CLMA on Twitter and Facebook. Like I say, you can get me on LinkedIn.